Good. Well, I think we should start. Let's start on time. So it's 11 o'clock. A warm welcome to our panel debate. And I'm really excited to be joined by four fabulous panelists. So some brief introductions. First of all, Sabine M from Locatee. Sabine is the Customer Success and Thought Leadership Manager based in Zurich. Sabine, welcome. Also with me is Peter Baumann from SAP based in Zurich. Peter, welcome. Peter is Global Real Estate and Facilities and Global Head of Project at SAP. So looking forward to a great conversation. We have Dr. Susanne Hügel from CBRE based in Frankfurt. Susanne, welcome. And Susanne is Head of Digital Innovation, Business Acceleration for Continental Europe at CBRE. And finally, I'd love to introduce you to Mathias Elmiger. Mathias is at Johnson & Johnson, based out of Lucerne, and is Director of Knowledge and Data Strategy. So Mathias, welcome. So a fantastic panel of four experts based in Zurich, Switzerland and Germany. And Mathias, let's just start with you really, because I guess if there's any organisation we're all looking for some great breakthroughs in the current climate, it's Johnson & Johnson. Of course, one of the pioneers of finding us a cure for this vaccine. So maybe just tell us about your experience so far in COVID. What have you done? How have you reacted, and how are you trying to solve the problem of both workplace and the future of work?
Yeah. So hi everyone. COVID for J&J. Obviously, J&J is a large company. We have over 900 properties around the globe, all three regions, and it hit us badly in China. Through what happened in China, we learned a lot, and we tried to adapt the learnings throughout the globe. What we have done, obviously, is we extended our visibility to the portfolio. So with over 900 properties, it was quite difficult in these times to understand how many people are still entering the buildings. Is a site actually live, or did we close it down? So what we have agreed during COVID is really expanding the utilization technology we had in place before only in 4 properties as a test environment to over 500 properties globally, which covers about 80% of our footprint. So we do understand now more or less in real time what is the current utilization within our portfolio. I think that was a major element for us within real estate, within facilities management, to make sure we can support the staff on site properly. So that was a major impact. Secondly, certainly the technology impact to our employees. In Switzerland, in the US, everyone would have a laptop, everyone could organize access to internet, but we obviously have a lot of sites where you may not have internet access at home. Third world countries, evolving markets, you never know how stable the connections are. So second piece was really technology, bringing technology to those employees, but also providing them with the right collaboration tools, making sure they do not lose connectivity. Thirdly, the most important one for us, obviously, is keep production live. Make sure that the production employees feel safe, they have all the safety measurements in place. We care about their families, also their children, because schools were closed. So make sure there is support in place for those employees as well. So a lot of measurements taken, a lot of actions taken throughout the globe.
And Mathias, you talked about the voice of the customer, which I thought was really interesting to kind of understand both people's concerns and their aspirations. Yeah. Give us the highlights of what that VOC fed back.
Very interesting from HR. It was a sentiment survey every week to a subset of our employees, about 3,000 employees, reflecting the organization and seeing how employees shift in their behavior, their satisfaction, their experience at home. First you had the lockdown, kids were at home, then back to school, then partially back to the office, and how the employees react to the new environment, to the new experiences they had, and how we as an organization within facilities management and real estate can actually adopt those experiences, make them even better, but now also reverting back again. So obviously numbers go through the roof again, at least in many countries in Europe, as well as in the US. And, you know, we're reverting back now. So what does that mean for our employees? You know, what can we do for them? What do we need to put in place as a guidance to support them at the moment at home, but then going forward in the new normal, in the new office environment, whatever that will be.
And Sabine, let's turn to you, because obviously you've heard from Mathias about how they've ramped up their occupancy tracking tools and so on. Now you were part of that. Maybe tell us a bit about Locatee. I love the idea. You kind of showed me a wonderful kind of infographic which talked around personalizing, finding, optimizing, educating, conserving and securing. Tell us about what your approach is.
Yeah, so Locatee provides the utilization data by reading out network connections, which is really nice because you don't have to install hardware. You can exploit what's already in all companies' buildings, the Wi-Fi and LAN network. So when an employee comes into the office with their device, so the laptop, for example, and connects to the company network, Locatee is able to grasp that and then runs that through an algorithm, and we can then present utilization data live and historically on dashboards. And well, the beauty of that is that currently the live data and the short-term data has become very important for monitoring safety of people in the building, making sure they're abiding by social distancing rules, just making sure buildings are not overcrowded. And at the same time, we're all crossing our fingers for returning to the office in the future. We can then gather the data over time, and we'll see what the choice of employees is when they have the choice again, for which kind of tasks do they want to come to the office, and when would they probably stay at home, and then you can read these utilization levels and help you make real estate and portfolio decisions then for the midterm and long-term future.
That makes complete sense. I mean, Susanne, you talked a bit about data and the view of data, but also around trust. Tell us a bit more about data and COVID as a catalyst for re-establishing trust.
Yeah, so I mean, the entire workforce and also the leadership of companies had made an interesting experiment, real-life experiment about trust, because there are companies within their culture and DNA, it's not that common to have remote working styles and more virtual leadership styles. So people are more connected to the leadership. They have FaceTime every day, kind of physical check-in, personal check-ins. And due to the entire Corona situation and the lockdown, people had to stay at home in the home office, and they had to develop new relationships, digital relationships. So on the one hand, actually there are two interesting things. So on the one hand, you couldn't escape from home. You were sitting, you had your screen time. So by that, the leaders experience that they can trust their employees, that they also work, and they do not do housework because they just can call them, make video calls, etc. So they can't escape. So there was this first removal of you can trust that people also can work remotely. And also on the other hand, there was this, it's okay to fail. So not every video call was perfect. So there were problems with audio, video, etc. And it was okay like that. So people had the chance to, even if they were not digital natives, to slowly adapt to the entire situation because everybody had to face it. And this was a very good and broad kind of experiment and also experience for both the workforce and the leadership in different companies and different company cultures to make the next step and get comfortable with the situation. I mean, we're still in this learning process because it's kind of up and down and we do not know what will happen within the next weeks and months. But I think it was an important experience for all parties involved.
No, that makes complete sense. I mean, Peter, you talked to me about the idea of it's now a game changer, right? You know, the data we've got, the insights that gives us. gets us away from this binary approach. Tell us what you're capturing and how that's informing a new situation and approach.
Thank you. Yeah, love the conversation. Speaking of game changer, I believe obviously we all acknowledge that the actual situation is on the one hand side dramatic, and we got all these elements and the precautions and measurements that we have to follow, but also it's a great opportunity because it's accelerating on the change that already happened before. We all acknowledge through this utilization data. At SAP, we are using a bit more of a simplified approach compared to Locatee. We have a VPN solution internally, and we know how much people are coming in and out on a daily basis. And with that, we already tried to pick the right sizing, to change a bit, as I said, this binary approach to workstation and not to workstation into a more holistic approach about functionalities and the real need of the users. And as I mentioned, this whole COVID situation accelerated it. And what we are doing now is we have obviously now a great opportunity to look into the pre-COVID utilization data. We have a location strategy where we can anticipate the growth very, let's say, close aligned with the CEO board areas. And what we now do is also we're going out there with what Mathias talked about, the pulse checks. We ask the people about how they are feeling, and with that also, what is their prediction to come back to the office? Like, what is their expectation and their need when it comes to the ways of working? So we address this in 3 dimensions. It's the flex time, the flex location, and ultimately to the flex workspace. But it is now the game changer, the shift into the conversation about the why people are coming back, right? What really do they need? What they want to experience coming back? Is it about to sit on a workstation, or is it to belong to a community, to experience the team, the brand, and really be a part of something? And that's what we now have.
And have you actually got any conclusions yet? And I love the idea that you're aggregating binary data with experience data and looking at expectations.
Yeah,
what are you hearing? Any earlier signs of what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually striking. We sense that there is we in the global real estate and facilities department, we still very often use the language of how many workstations, what is assigned and unassigned. So we're still kind of trapped in this, let's call it more conventional, traditional conversation, where we have now development business units that reach out to us and say, guys, we need a complete new access to a talent pool. How can we get there? And with that, the conversation is now elevated to a total new level. And we need to admit that sometimes we kind of lagging in the conversation. We really need to step up and provide a different language now to the customer. As I mentioned about the why, about the purpose, and ultimately that will trigger. So it's almost like, and by the way, I'm quoting somebody that Mathias might know who it is. Tell them the story, let them digest the story, make them to make it their own story, and then back it up with the data, right? That's John from Johnson & Johnson that actually quoted me on or experienced this quote to me. So I really believe that this is the game changer. It's an elevator pitch rather than just a pure.
What is the story? I guess it would be interesting to hear about your sentiment surveys, but also, look, you're a big global company. How do you see differences by culture, by country, by type of property in terms of your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, it wasn't a cookie cutter approach, and also in the future it won't be. I think there is a general strategy, workplace strategy for J&J we had in place, or we still have in place. It's an activity-based working environment, at least for a large segment of our employees, office employees. So we're quite flexible already in the portfolio, but I think now there's a whole new level of segmentation we have to look at, and that's the whole workforce segmentation. And as Peter just said, the whole talent pool and how does it fit into the physical property we still provide in the future to our employees. So that will be the big next ask for our businesses as well as the supporting functions as facilities and real estate and HR to define what are the segments of employees, what are the segments of job categories which will enter the building and for whatever purpose. So is it the belonging? Is it the collaboration? Is it the innovation hub? is it the focused work because you do not have the focused place at home? Again, back to certain cultures and countries where you may not have the ability to work from home. So you would have to provide an environment within your property to do the focused work and not just go in and collaborate and innovate, but actually do heads down work. So there is a lot to think about. You know, a holistic approach, yes, but still having cultural, country-specific adoption possibilities.
Do you have any feeling for what kind of the rhythm of a typical week might look like? Do you see how many days or hours might be at home, in the office, in other spaces yet, or is it too early to tell?
Honestly, for me, that's really depending on what we're providing. You know, is it an R&D hub? Maybe completely different to a standard commercial office environment. Also the market, you know, is it Japan? We have over 100 sales offices, small sales offices, almost like a small co-working environment. In US, completely different. So I wouldn't be able to answer that. I think we would want to have kind of an average utilization throughout the week. I think that's the main goal we would like to have as you know, it's almost like a hotel. Also the corporate real estate function. You would love to see the Mondays to Fridays evened out. You know, all the employees have equal space when they arrive, equal ability to enter all the cool rooms, and not only the leftovers at the entrance of the building. So that's more the question. What we need to provide to have this utilization averaged out and provide the right basis for the employee segment in that building or in that environment.
No, that makes complete sense. And if the audience would like to ask any of the panelists a question, please fire your questions onto the chat. Sabine, let's just talk to you. I mean, you heard from Mathias that it is about the activity and purpose of coming back in. Do you have any view as to how your platform or platforms in general will help to allow this kind of flattening of the curve of a clear vision of utilization, but also of the certainty that when you come in, you get the space you need? And do you also see any intelligence coming into platforms through kind of AI or machine learning?
Yeah, so what I think will happen is actually the metrics and performance measures that we looked at before, which were very much cost-centric and efficiency-centric. I think that's going to change for a more human-centric approach. So we will have to look at other measures for workplace efficiency. It's not going to be how many desks can you fit in this office, but are people actually using the settings that are provided? Because I personally think people will not come back to sit alone at a desk. They can do that at home. They will come back to collaborate and communicate and get a sense of community with their colleagues and maybe to build careers. So that's all aspects that the workplace needs to support. And then if you look at our solution, we of course can provide data for when people come to the office, on which day do they come typically to the office, and what work settings do they typically go to, which zones of the building are most populated. So that's data that you can gather. And of course, we would have then to marry this with data or with knowledge that you have, or with these employee surveys that you do to understand what type of work are people doing when they come to the office. What's their motivation? Is there a Monday meeting that they need to attend? Is there still the perception of Friday is the accepted home office day? I don't believe it is, but there might be organizational reasons for that, and you need to add this together.
And do you see that people should book a space before they make it into the office? Do you feel all space needs to now be online, bookable?
Well, I can only say from my feeling, it takes away some of the flexibility. I do see the need for it in these times to have some organization around making sure not too many people want to come to a side currently, but I think for the future, this would take away from people being able to make a choice depending on the nature of tasks they are going to do. And sometimes ad hoc things happen. A colleague comes to you and wants to have a conversation about something, exchange some ideas, and then you don't want to be stuck with the workplace that you booked in advance.
Yeah, it does erode serendipity and kind of the chance, the spontaneity of workplace. I mean, Susanne, let's just look at the extended workplace, you know, getting to understand what the workplace at home might look like. And we've heard a lot about emerging legislation, certainly in Germany. Tell us about what's going on there and what your view is about the responsibility of employers now to provision work outside the office.
Yeah, so it's actually quite interesting, a complex environment, since the company can't decide on their own how they want to handle it. They also have to take into consideration, for example, the legal requirements, as well as how do the people live that I employ? Are they working in a single one-room apartment? Do they have enough space to do or to work from home, or do they work remotely? So for example, in Germany, it's like that they differentiate between the term home office and remote working. So when you work from home, which explicitly means that you work in your residential area, then you have tax benefits for that, but you have to have a room, for example, where you have a desk, where you have a door, you can close it, and the main purpose of the room is for working. So by having this homework, you have tax benefits, and on the other hand, your employer is also responsible that this area, your desk, and also the lighting, etc., also applies to working guidelines that are in place. So this is kind of also bringing some dependency for the employers, that that then suddenly would not only have to cater for the office and the equipment of the office, they would also suddenly have several tiny offices where they have to take care of, and which makes it quite complex. So when we are talking not only from home office, but from remote working, which means you do not work in the office, but somewhere else, the guidelines do not apply. So it's kind of a little bit looser. But on the other hand, the question is, can the employee also make sure that they have a good internet connection, that when they work on very sensitive information, topics and data, that they have everything safe and things like that. So it's becoming more and more complex if you go out or move out from the old normal to a new normal, which we are still kind of in the finding phase. We are still not there, which makes it so important to have proper data on the behavior and the occupancy and utilization of the spaces. So you can come up with new concepts, and you can better handle also the question of, is it home work or is it remote work, what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, Peter, are you able to join us? I keep seeing you're on audio. No, that's great. That's great. Good. So, Peter, let's just get your perspective.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
on that.
I had some technical.
Both the kind of responsibility and your approach to
camera.
Yeah, don't worry, we can hear the audio. Your approach and your responsibility to people working outside of SAP offices. And there's also a question about ergonomics from Bertie van Wyk. Is any approach to how, we heard from our West Coast panel discussions, people like Facebook saying that they're going to provide a budget for people to actually put furniture into their homes and so on. And any approach that you've thought through so far?
Yeah, we are putting thoughts into, so it's not yet established on a global scale, but we had conversation, obviously IT, HR, and total rewards are part of the conversation at the table. It goes in the direction that we'd rather go into a monetary contribution to cover some of these needs. But also we want to highlight the choice by the employees, right? The choice of the diversity in, again, the dimension of when, where, and how they work. And I believe what is important is that not only we shall give them an opportunity for a desk and a chair, I believe it's also to train the people to be mindful, right? I want to talk about it's great to have, the opportunity to work from home, to sit at the kitchen table, but being mindful about the health of the community that you have at home, of your coworker and your family, so that people really get access to the how, right? To the best practice. How do I clearly make a distinguishing of behavior between my kids and myself being at work, having free time, when am I accessible, when I'm not accessible, how do I pitch this to my family? So all these things are going to be important. So it's not only about equipment. I believe ergonomic in the broader sense of having a healthy working pattern and kind of this blurred lines with the, let's say, private life are not too much blurred. So we can clearly distinguish and have this clear set of rules. So it's a lot about knowledge transfer, training, and providing the people with the right artifact, technical assets like furniture, but also
Peter, do you see anything in between the home and the office? Do you see SAP adopting some kind of third space solution? And does that also give you some overall reduction in your real estate portfolio going forwards?
It's a very fair question. I believe we need to acknowledge that if we provide third opportunities, in between, as you mentioned, that they won't come for free. So I don't primarily see a reduction. What I see is really the increase of diversity of opportunities, and that's something that I believe is part of the conversation with the business.
Yeah, we lost a bit of diversity. Just go back to the diversity point.
Sorry. So the diversity of the opportunities, of the choices is key. And I believe ultimately it's driven by the fact of what are the talent markets we want to penetrate, right? And with that said, obviously, I would say there is a large portion of our workforce it's kind of hard to convince to go this third option. But there's definitely a new generation pushing to the markets that we want to have access to that might be more than interesting to have such offerings. So we are at the beginning
Matthias,
of the journey, but definitely
at
part of
Johnson & Johnson, I mean, with a very large portfolio, do you see an ambition now, looking at the holistic view, to reduce your overall portfolio? McKinsey came out with a paper recently saying that companies could achieve a 30% reduction in real estate in a kind of post-COVID view of the world. Yeah. What's your perspective?
I think we have a footprint strategy in place where there is a certain footprint optimization, I would say, not a reduction, as Peter said. It's a shift. Do we have the right places provided to the employees, the right spaces provided to the employees in the right place? And that's probably accelerated by COVID now, just to make sure that we have access to the right talent. I don't see an overall reduction just because of COVID. I think, eventually, if there is a reduction due to the home office factor, that could be longer term. I don't see that happening short term. Obviously, the portfolio, most of the offices are leased. You have a 5 to 10 year lease contract in place. I don't see immediate answers to that question, but there could be an acceleration of the footprint optimization.
So it's kind of a rebalancing we're hearing both yourself and Peter, not a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to get less space. And Sabine, let's just turn to you. There's an interesting question about the biggest struggle to get to a digital workplace. So I wouldn't mind just you maybe kind of finishing our debate on, what are the top priorities for professionals in real estate and workplace, and how do we get to this idea and the ideal of a digital workplace?
Yeah, so I think that biggest obstacle to the digital workplace is actually a fully digital workplace is not really desirable. What we've seen over the past month is there's a couple of things that do work in remote work. There is productivity, working efficiently, focus work. If your home setting allows that, as Susanne pointed out earlier, this works. And there you need to get the right tools for people to connect. But there is aspects that will not work digitally. Like, as mentioned before, connections to coworkers, and also having a sense of purpose. When you're working away at home alone, you don't feel it that much. And so the well-being is something that cannot work digitally. So that's something that the office probably still needs to provide. And therefore, a focus shift will happen in corporate real estate to a more enhanced profile, going away from managing costs and assets to a more holistic view of what a workplace can and should provide to help talent attraction, we had that before, and employee well-being. And as we all don't know yet how that future of work is going to look like, we should turn to evidence. And again, there we can explore the digital tools that are available, like the surveys and the utilization data and the outlook data that you can integrate to have glimpses and to build what then can be the future digital workplace experience with a variety of workplace offerings.
Interesting. Sabine, thank you. Well, look, that brings us to the end of our panel. As ever, we can carry on, but we've had a fantastic glimpse as to some of the ideas and initiatives that our panelists have shared with us. So please join me in thanking Sabine from Locatee, Peter from SAP, Susanne from CBRE, and Mathias from Johnson & Johnson. And of course, we hope Johnson & Johnson's workplace will instigate the new vaccine that we're all after to get us out of this precarious situation.